Hey guys, who do we got in here? I just turned on the members chat, so those of you that were in here before, if you're confused why you can't chat now, I just got to it. So we got Matt and Katie here from Crime Dive Investigates. I meant to put your link in the description. I have to do that right after so people could
go
to your channel. So hey guys, what's up?
How's it going?
You guys here.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. I haven't actually been since my last Delphi video. I haven't been like keeping up on what is the new things. Like, what do you guys think about this whole Anthony Schatz profile and Keegan Klein? Are you guys still thinking that they're involved, or?
I think that that there has been good movement in the case, and I think the investigation has led to a profile that is somehow connected to the murders. Somehow they know that that this individual at least used the services of the person owning the profile, and so we don't know. You know, me and her don't really agree on all the logistics of who is the individual that law enforcement are looking at.
We don't disagree, but there's certain parts of things that we don't.
We kind of go back and forth. So,
but do you think it's Keegan, his dad? I mean, or have you heard of this Lance Schatz that people have been talking about too? I mean, do you know anything about him?
He's a neighbor or something that's near. Yeah, I have heard that, but I think that that whoever made the profile, you know, we're going to assume that it's Keegan. He's kind of a chameleon, so he can't really come up with ideas himself, and so it would make sense that he's using names that he sees around him, you know,
sort of scramble it up or whatever.
So I think maybe the Schatz idea might have came from.
I see what you're saying. Okay,
but I don't think that they're connected or anything.
Okay, so I mean, but so you think other people are using that profile possibly, and that's the connection
it's
between.
Definitely possible. Yeah, that they're, you know, it's kind of a community profile in some way, or
sharing information.
Yeah, Klein was using it to speak to people who are part of some ring of creeps that are looking for kids, and you know, it's kind of assumed that that the suspect might have approached him in some way, and that Klein sort of directed them towards Liberty German.
We don't necessarily think that, you know, if it is going to be somebody else that was using the site, that there may not even be any knowledge to Keegan that this guy was going to kill anybody.
He's culpable.
But he's culpable if that's the case. But he, you know, if we're going with that theory, he sort of just facilitated the meetup.
Yeah, there's really only 3 theories at this point that we believe occurred. And the first one would be very unlikely, in my opinion, just because law enforcement have released his name. And that would be that Keegan Klein is the bridge guy, which I don't believe is the case. The second one would be someone extremely close to Keegan Klein is the bridge guy, and that somehow he learned of the girls through profiles his son was using from the house. And the third one would be that there is an individual, a murderer, who was part of a pedophile ring that was communicating that used the Anthony Schatz profile as sort of a shield to protect himself from authorities, and then went out to the bridge with knowledge and you know, set up a meeting in some way, maybe not with the girls, but with the Anthony Schatz profile. And Klein would have directed him to wherever these girls would have been, and this individual had murder on his mind, and unfortunately the girls passed away as a result of this.
So Klein, after this all happened, he probably was aware then it had something to do with.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, he was probably made aware that he facilitated, whether or not he knew, or not, pretty much, that he was setting this person up to do what he did.
Not necessarily murder, but that he.
Well, right. Yeah. So he ended up knowing, you know, obviously, this has to do with me. So when the police came and took his cell phone and were taking everything, it would make sense that, you know, even if he was just culpable in the sense that he was running this child porn ring and, you know, had all this data, and basically that he had some information that pertained to this case, they would be like, well, they're going to try to frame me for this. Right. So he just got rid of everything.
He knew that he was at least peripherally connected to this crime, whether that's, sending the assailant to the bridge that day to do something horrible, maybe accepted money from this guy, believed he was going to go there to, sexually assault them or do something like that. And then in the end, something even more horrific, if you can even say that that's more horrific, occurred.
But that was obviously his plan. It wasn't
that was a killer's plan.
People have sort of tossed back and forth whether it was an abduction gone wrong or whatnot. But I think with all the evidence that we have now, to me at least, it's fairly obvious that murder was what he intended to do.
We've been speaking with an insider from Carroll County, and this person's fairly verified. Obviously, they're protecting their identity, so we don't have this individual's definitive identification, but he's more than been able to provide us with enough evidence through tips we've submitted. He had awareness of these tips, and only a person that is an official would be able to have that sort of knowledge. So they've kind of verified with us that they are insiders. And
when you see an official, do you mean like law enforcement, or what do you mean by
I don't
that?
think I don't think they're law enforcement, but they're definitely
somebody that's seen at least the transcripts
Yeah.
of what Liberty recorded.
Whether they're retired or what, they have knowledge that they're kind of providing to us, and we're kind of going down that road.
So the transcript. So has he told you anything about like the transcripts, and how long really is that recorded video? Is there a lot more to it? You guys believe?
There are actually 2 recordings.
And that doesn't mean that there's 2 separate recordings necessarily, like she started the phone and stopped it and then started it again, but 2 clumps of sound clips that police pulled from there that as like something they could use.
One is video and the rest is audio. So at some point, she filmed the suspect approaching and put her phone into her pocket, and there is audio on top of the hill and then audio below the hill as well. It's about 10 minutes long, and law enforcement has divided that into 2 parts.
Wow. And there's obviously not enough information in that audio to. So do you believe it was only one person then?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. They believe that as well, as far as this individual says.
And in the past, they've chosen to phrase things pretty interesting in the sense of like, it almost seems like in the past, sometimes it's almost seemed like Doug Carter was trying to separate the person on the bridge from the person in the audio. But now, after everything is said and done, and I think since, at least a year after the April 2019 presser, they've sort of figured out that this is just one person.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I've been thinking 2 this whole time, but you guys have a lot more.
Well, like depending on how you look at it, right? Like there are more than one that are involved or connected to the crime. But there's really only one individual who knew that he was going to go to the bridge that day and murder those girls. The other people who are kind of attached to this are either attached through a profile that this killer communicated with, or might be connected to the shot's profile along the side of it. But of course, he hasn't given us any information about any of the things that are connected to it, just the stuff in the immediate vicinity of the Anthony Shot's profile.
I just don't understand though how one person controlled both girls in like an open area like that. I mean, why you think one of them would have ran and got help, or they would have just like ran away? I don't get it. That's why it was one of the reasons I thought there was 2 people to help to get them both down there.
My opinion is that he probably used one of the girls to say, don't run away or I'm going to hurt her. Is sort of
it's called quiet coercion. It's where you threaten harm to somebody and order them to be quiet. The other theory, and this individual has told us this, is that this individual posed as a law enforcement agent. And so when he crossed the bridge, he notified them that it was too dangerous to cross back and that they had to go below the hill. Whether that means that he brandished a badge or a gun, the girls believe they were being arrested for trespassing. And that's how he kind of controlled them, using an authority sort of.
And part of the reason that we think, and we've sort of been told that they didn't release everything right sort of out the gate was they didn't want people to focus on law enforcement,
Right.
because apparently there are things that are said that would give people sort of the context of this person is a police officer.
Okay.
So they
It
didn't want
would have
people
caused
to-
so many false tips and stuff. People would have been calling in all the law enforcement officers that they required for the investigation, and it's a small community, so you can imagine that if the community thought that it could be a law enforcement agent, that it would muddy up their investigation if people were tipping in law enforcement agents.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they did that.
But I mean, couldn't they eventually explain like it's not a law enforcement agent? It's somebody pretending to be, because I feel like now, how many years passed and now we haven't found the guy. And I feel like if they would have, I don't know, if they would give us more information, wouldn't it be easier to kind of find him? Because they think he's a local, right?
Yep, they do. Yep. I think that if you take a look at the whole of their investigation, their entire strategy, it makes sense to not want to release the law enforcement angle, just because they're already trying to not give out as much information as they can. So in trying to prevent information getting out there.
But that
It
hasn't
creates-
worked though. That's it drives me nuts.
No, it
'Cause it's like
hasn't.
that's not working. So they need to go a different way, a different route, because it's obviously not working. They have a video
Right.
of them, they have an audio of them. Maybe they need to release a little bit more of the audio, because maybe there's more of the voice in it that somebody could recognize them or something.
At this point, I'm not sure if they really even need the public's help anymore.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that that's really what this is boiled down to. At first, they were asking, the public for help, and I think at some point they realized, in a roundabout way, what exactly is going on. And so at that point, the public's really not their number one concern. I don't agree with their strategy. I think that it was very reckless to stand up in front of all those people in Delphi and tell them that it's a local and not explain why they think that. Because all that did was cause a hysteria and cause everybody to be suspecting everybody, which created a lot more problems, and it did more harm to the families, in my opinion. In the
That's
end,
true. I can imagine what that did to like a small town like that. Everybody's like suspicious of everybody. Wow. So you think they're onto something? I mean, you think they're going to catch him then?
I think
Yeah.
they're very close.
Wow, that's actually really good news, and all because of this Anthony Shots. But they knew about this profile the whole time, though. So what it just took them this long to figure out everything, or is it
I
something?
think that, in my opinion, and I think we kind of agree on this, is that if you look at it, Vincent Kowalski didn't even know that his picture was being used, and that law enforcement were looking at a profile that had his image on it. And I think the reason that they did this really quick reveal and did a PSA on it was because the guy was trying to communicate with the profile again, and they had to get in front of him so he didn't act again.
Right. Something happened that caused them to have to on a Monday, at 10 p.m. release that statement. And I think that it was, if you take a look at the strategy that law enforcement has used since the beginning, it always seems to be communicating with the killer. And so there's something to that we're not privy to, that law enforcement are communicating with the killer by releasing that affidavit and by releasing the information about the Shots profile. So,
and like, again, Vincent Kowalski wasn't even alerted that his picture was being used. So it's almost like they had to show their hand there to show the guy that
he might have been ready to act again. He might have communicated or attempted to communicate. Law enforcement kept it very secret that Klein was incarcerated. And there's a very good reason for that. It's to prevent the suspect from knowing that the profile has been seized by law enforcement. And I think
Now it's making
I think
sense.
that they
Okay.
continued to use it. They kept it active, and in the end, the suspect might have made contact with it.
Wow, so he might have been planning to do this again, huh?
Pretty scary to think about.
I know. That's
stuff
just,
had kind of quieted down. So it's like,
it just seems so weird that they knew this whole time, that law enforcement, and they didn't even tell well, I guess they couldn't tell the families or tell anybody. So do you see this comment up here? What about the rumor there's a gun cocking in the audio? You guys probably heard that.
I think it's very likely that there was a gun that was brandished. Whether that's on the top or the bottom of the hill, we don't know. if he posed as a law enforcement agent, it doesn't make sense for him to just pull his gun out and start criminal activity right away. He probably used a ruse to get them down there, and had to pull the gun to kind of get it under control. Because I'm sure that the girls were putting up a fight in the early moments once they figured out that something was wrong.
happening. My best guess is that he used the ruse of just, you're trespassing. You can't go back across the bridge because you're pretty much being detained. So we have to go down.
Right.
Yeah. But how do you explain when they searched that night? Why didn't they find them that night? You think they just overlooked them, or do you think that they?
I think that there were a lot of factors at play that night. The first factor is that they didn't know that they had a homicide on their hands yet. The second one is that the bridge, even though it's somewhat of a public place, the area where the girls were found was private property. And so that might have created an issue for them to have access to something like that without a warrant. And
it's also just really difficult to see, especially with how we've been out there twice now. And I mean, there's really no visible lights there. There's no lights. There's nothing put up along the trails. So they really only had the flashlights, and the area where the girls were murdered is really hard to get to. Yeah. There's a steep hill that is on the north side of the bridge that's on the Mears property that you actively have to hold on to trees as you go down to scale downward, or you'll fall. So it's actually pretty treacherous area to walk in.
It's probably a 70-degree angle,
especially at night. And the other aspect is where the girls were found, there is a lip that is on the bank that kind of is sloped upward a little bit. So you can't necessarily see down into Ron Logan's property, even if you're across the creek.
Now, our insider did say that the searchers did go into the immediate area where the bodies were the night before, that it was a source of contention in the early days of the investigation, that a lot of the families were arguing and fighting about it, and very upset that they had missed the bodies. But I don't think that it was an intentional thing. I don't think the bodies got moved there.
Wouldn't have done anything either, really.
Yeah, I just think that, due to the circumstances, how dark it was. And if you look at the water levels on the 14th, they were pretty high. And when you get there to Deer Creek, you think it's going to be small, but it's a good 35 feet across. So there was just too much area to cover, and things were just kind of a shit show. No one was really taking control, and I'm sure there's a lot of regret.
I bet. Yeah, because I've seen, other people visit, and it seems like, I mean, how did he get the girls down? I mean, you think he would fall down that hill, right? That's what you said. There was
it's hard to get down that hill on the south side too. It's pretty.
There are actually two hills. So the first hill is right off the bridge, and then you walk about 15 feet, and it's very steep at that point.
Oh, okay. So the first one's not even as steep as the second one, you're saying? Oh, wow. Because I was picturing like the first one I was thinking of. Okay. So Mama Mia says, Matt and Kate, what's your feelings about Brian Chadwell? Because I still get so many comments where so many people still think it's him. I don't, because I mean,
yeah.
But I think he's been looked into. I do think that it's for several reasons. I think he might have been peripherally connected to Klein's profile in some way. Maybe they have mutual friends or something like that. But as well as that, I think that there's some relevance to the idea that there might have been dog hair left on one of the victims or near the crime scene. And so the pit bull that they seized from Chadwell was probably the lead that they were looking into. Because
they did take the dog, and then they took the dog in Keegan's.
They took Klein's pit bull as well.
So you kind of have to just connect the dots. And, when Robert Ives says that there's evidence, but it's not necessarily what you would think, it makes sense that it would be something like dog hair over blood or spit or something,
Oh, wow. Okay. I did not know that. So is there really DNA too then, or no?
There is DNA.
Oh, okay.
Supposedly their prime suspect, whether the prime suspect, they've never really told us who the prime suspect was in the information that this individual released. But they do have a prime suspect that's connected to all of this, who had a phone that pinged to the CPS lot area on the day of the murders between 12 and 5. and who was potentially part of the search crew. And so this kind of muddied it up. If that's Klein, then that would explain why they were looking at him in the immediate days of them realizing that he had connections to this.
But you also have to think about this is if they have law enforcement or people saying that he probably was on the search or helped out, and Keegan's alibi along with his dad was that he was in Las Vegas. Well, you can't be in Las Vegas and on the search party at the same time.
So it creates an alibi issue. So
you would think it would be easy to debunk because they also have a list of the searchare too. So it's like if they're on there. Then
I just think something's going on that maybe we don't fully understand. You know, this there are a couple individuals who covered their asses really well and did things to kind of throw the investigation off, and it created evidence that was not legitimate. And police still have to go through illegitimate evidence. It just kind of muddies it up, and it didn't help with all the tips too that they were getting. Like Doug Carter said recently that there were something like 50 to 70,000 tips that were called in the last 5 years. So they have to go through every single tip. They still have to follow up with every person that calls in and says, I think it's my uncle or I think it's my cousin. And on top of that, they have a prime investigation that they're trying to, they might know more things about certain individuals, but they still have to follow up with everybody else too.
So wait, are you saying that Keegan was in the search crew? Is that what you just said?
That's what it seems like. At least the individual or one of his phones that he ended up turning in was somehow linked to the area during the murders, and there is some linkage between him and the search potentially. Wow. So whether that means he went on a later date and then lied about the date he went, or
went meaning
went
Las
to Vegas. Yeah. If he went on the 13th, like he claims, maybe his dad did not go until the 15th, and then he might be saying, he was there with me on the 13th. Well, that would create kind of a problem, especially if it appears on paper that his dad was there. Then they have to kind of find a way to debunk that information before they can get probable cause.
So, I mean, do you think his dad was involved with that profile too, like hooking up with young girls and stuff?
It's potential, and that's kind of the way I see it.
It's sort of like when you they're living in the same house type thing. And so it's sort of like, well, how do you not know that that's going on necessarily? But I sort of used an analogy where it was like, let's say that, somebody's selling drugs out of a house and they live with somebody else, right? And they're like, okay, well, people are only getting this supply from this one house. So it's got to be either the people that live in the house.
Right.
But then also you have to think they're running this child porn thing online and using Dropbox. So then you got to also think about the potential of somebody coming into the house and, back to the analogy, buying drugs, taking drugs, doing that, like having, working the business with him. So there could be a third party, I think.
He might have been dispensing his phones too. If you notice on the affidavit, he had several devices, like a ridiculous amount of devices. And several of them are Samsung, even though they were on current plans. He also had iPhones. I don't know many individuals that have a Samsung and an iPhone.
Yeah.
So the fact that there were 4 that were active says that there's potential there that he just dispenses phones to use during these crimes potentially, and that's how this sort of got linked to him. But I don't think that law enforcement believes that he's the suspect. And so I think that's what's really creating the problem. Either his alibi checks out and they have a way that they can debunk that he could have been there, or he's lying about being there, and that creates another set of problems.
Regardless, he at least knows who did it.
Yes.
So do you think he's going to give the names then, maybe? Because maybe he could get like a plea deal for all the charges. He's got so many charges. You think he would maybe give them the name if he knows?
Well,
make a deal.
That's one of the theories that I kind of hold on to. It's got to be someone extremely close to him, because I don't know about you. If I was involved in something and some individual that I didn't care about went and did something horrible like this, I would be doing everything to save my own ass. and I just don't see that happening right now.
But the other thing that we don't know is we don't know that Keegan hasn't told them who it is.
Right.
So
That's true. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe they already know. Maybe it could still be Keegan. I mean, maybe they just haven't announced it, or maybe they do know. Maybe Keegan has told them, because you know how they're so quiet, and they probably are going to take a while to make sure they got all their facts right. Yeah.
T's crossed and I's dotted, because the thing is, let's say that he has, Doug Carter says this is, an example of how constant pressure works. He may have told law enforcement who it is, and now they just have to build the case.
Right.
And they're not ready to come out right now and say it is XYZ.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. So Doug Carter, he's still working on the case then, right?
Yeah, he's still the superintendent for the Indiana State Police. Yeah, he seems like a really good guy. I kind of go back and forth on how I feel about the way Indiana State Police covered all of this. But I think there's been a lot of conflict between the different agencies that are involved. Some probably want to release information. Others don't want to release information. And so I think that's where you get insiders like we've been speaking with, who are just kind of tired of the scrutiny being thrown at Carroll County when it's not exactly their decision that's causing this.
Yeah, man.
It's pretty intense.
Do you know, somebody asked, I forget who asked this. I think it was Lauren asked, is there a death penalty in Indiana? Do you know?
There is.
There is.
Oh, there is. Okay.
Yeah.
So
He's looking at the death penalty, whoever did this.
Wow. So yeah, Keegan probably will give up the names if he does indeed actually really know.
Yeah, I just think that they can't get him for murder or homicide right now, and I think that's going to create a bunch of problems in the end if they don't get that perfectly figured out before they start pressing charges on people. But I definitely think he's going to be culpable in the crime in some way. He will have facilitated a meeting, unbeknownst to the girls, and this individual went to the bridge and, targeted Liberty. That's what this official told us, that Liberty was the one that was targeted specifically.
Oh, okay.
The individual must have been looking for her and contacted the shots profile, and that's where this kind of began to unfold. Because
what you got to think of is, it's all, and this isn't meant as a compliment to this disgusting person in any way, but it's almost kind of a brilliant plan in a way, in the sense that you're shielding yourself with these bad people, these pedophiles, because it's like, well, what are they going to do? Talk? Because if they talk, then they're going to get in trouble too. So
right. So they're all involved in the worst type of crimes. So they're not going to want to help law enforcement to lock everybody else up, as well as build incriminating evidence against them for coming forward. So I don't think that we're dealing with a spouse that law enforcement's looking for. I think it's someone who was involved in scrupulous things going on in rural Indiana against children. And this is a widespread issue. If you look in the last month in Peru alone, I think there's been at least 3 to 4 different arrests specifically. They may or may not be connected to the shots profile, but I would have the tendency to assume that all of this is connected in some way.
They're finding bad people along the way of getting the info that they need.
So,
I bet. And so can you guys see that question up there? It says, what kind of charge could Keegan get? I don't know if you guys.
I mean, can you get like an accessory or something like that? I mean,
well, I think that he was communicating with this individual in the least, so at least
withholding evidence.
At least he was communicating with this individual. The individual set up a meeting, whether that was under false pretenses, or he was involved in criminal activity that led to the killer having this information, and that will give him some culpability with this crime, because he's committing a crime.
Unless if he helps him out, and helps him out with the. So maybe that's what's going on, man. I hope for the families. You talk to the families too, huh? Are you in contact? How are they with all this new information?
They've been very quiet, and that's to be expected. We've gone through little flurries of conversation with them and stuff. I try to stay in touch as much as I can and send messages, but it gets to a certain level where once you're getting information from insiders and things like that, there's really nothing you can do for them other than to be supportive and hope that the investigation's heading in the right direction for them. So that's kind of where we are now.
I mean, do they feel like they've been lied to, or are they just happy that there you have something to look into?
I think for the most part, they're supportive of law enforcement and the strategy. We haven't always agreed on that sort of thing. Carrie Timmons, Libby's mother, she's been a little more vocal about disagreeing with the strategy. Yeah. But we don't, a lot of them have been harmed by people on social media. And so
they're just defensive and like
try to give them their distance. I don't want to be one of those trashy groups that kind of goes around doing that to victims and stuff. But
and you also don't want to just like bug them too with like, a bunch of information,
especially right now, because they're probably getting a lot of messages of questions and stuff, people wondering what's going on with the case. And so we just try to put as much information out there. If an insider is giving us information, we're going to put it out there. They've been very vocal about not giving us information that's going to harm the conviction. And so we put our trust in that the information that we release to the public, is legitimate, and that it's somehow helping their case move along. We don't know how. We're not in the know about any of that, but we just do our best to try to help and assist the best we can.
So what about Garrett Kirts? I saw you released an interview. Did you interview him, Katie?
I did.
How do you think he's involved in any way?
No, this was 2 years ago, and I worked for another podcast, and he had me do that. And it was less of like an interview and more of just a conversation. If people are saying, oh, this interview, like she sounds like a high schooler trying to be cool with it, but it's like that was what I was trying to do. It was less of an interview and more of you get him talking and he slips up and he says stuff. So.
He said a lot of interesting things.
He said a lot of interesting things. I thought it was interesting of his own volition. He said down the hill like 4 times, but we weren't even talking about the crime. He just was talking about certain stories and saying that it was almost like it was a subconscious thing or something. And then he also said that the crime that he committed against Nicole Bowen was nothing like the murders in Delphi because there weren't any knives involved or anything. So I thought that was interesting too. Because
and she asked him like, how do you know? Like law enforcement has never released anything about knives.
So and I think it was just less of like a thing that he's has anything directly to do with this, and more of a thing of there's probably rumors that are going around in the area, of certain things. And he, sort of caught himself there and was like, well, I don't know really, but, my friend had told us that they counted stab marks. So he kind of like backtracked a little bit. And I think it's interesting, but I don't think it necessarily had anything to do with like, I did turn it over to law enforcement and I got a handful of people contacting me about it though.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
They were definitely interested in it, and with good reason. He says a lot of very strange things in there.
Had detectives asking to access the file.
But he is a murderer. So, and he murdered several individuals, not just the one that he's in prison for.
Yeah.
Or at least people believe that he's involved with that other murder.
Yeah, the other murder. What was
Ray Hanish.
Ray Hanish, yeah.
Yeah, I think. Wow, I can't. And they're not doing anything about that, right? I mean.
Pretty strange, pretty strange, if you ask me.
But yeah, he was. I mean, I talked to him. I sent him some money for commissary, so he would talk to me and stuff. So I at least bought him a few packs of ramen, and he
was this before Open Secrets interviewed him.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
I didn't. We didn't.
I have to still go back and listen to all yours because I just started. I've got to listen to a few of your videos. But he said some interesting things with her too. That was. Mm-hmm. Like, remember when he said that there was somebody that he had talked to that said that they had like a tape of it happening?
Yeah. He never mentioned anything like that to me. When I talked to him, he more talked about just, his friend, who's I guess I can say her name right, Michaela Babcock, who was like one of his close friends. I've also talked to her, who's Libby's cousin, I think. Yeah. So that's how he was sort of connected to the case. And he had told me pretty much like what she had said around the time of the crime and stuff. And I don't know. There's just a lot of factors that make him an interesting POI, like him talking about being held up in his grandmother's house, overdosing from spice during the days of the murders.
He was withdrawing or something at the time.
But it's neither here nor there. I don't think he's the bridge guy. I don't know. I never really thought concretely he was the bridge guy. He's a murderer, but he is mainly concerned with himself and his own personal gain, drugs, money, that type of stuff.
The more traditional reasons for murder.
Traditional.
Stealing and robbing people and trying to cover up other crimes and things like that. So that's.
But then he failed a polygraph, right? But he said it was on what question? Because they asked him about Delphi, right? Isn't that what? I forget what question.
I think that they did ask him about Delphi. I don't really remember what, because that wasn't on the one that I did. So it had to have been on Open
Secrets. I think he said what the question was. Now I forget. That's what he said, but it's like, do you believe that's the question that you failed on?
That's the thing. These individuals are narcissists. They have psychopathic tendencies and sociopaths. They manipulate people around them, and you'll notice that their lies develop. And so when I hear, him not mentioning the video to Kate, and then months later him mentioning that there's a video involved too, it's kind of like the story expands like a liar would expand that story.
He's definitely a liar. He is a murderer and he's a liar.
So it's something that you have to take with a grain of salt. Chris Watts is the same way, making up all kinds of crap as he moves along. We just watched that documentary today again for the second or third time.
He's the worst. He's so stupid.
What a nightmare.
Such an idiot. I know he is.
I just stupid. How did he think he was? It's gonna be fine.
That we were all just shocked. Like, what? How do you think you're just gonna get away with it? And then it's just like, oh yeah, she just went to her friend's house.
And those investigators in that case did such a good job. They totally destroyed him. Puffed him up and made him feel like he could defeat them. And in the end, when he was ready to do that polygraph, I always laugh when Tammy's like, you'd be pretty stupid to come here right now to do a polygraph. Yeah. And he's just falling apart inside. He knows he's done.
Oh, I love that part. But I feel like he just had the perfect personality for them to get him like that, because he was just an idiot and he just fell for it. Like some people, it wouldn't be that easy, but I'm glad they did.
Very gullible.
Yeah.
Very gullible.
And what about, I can't remember this guy's name, but he comes in to the chats all the time and he's in all the comments at Delphi, and he thinks that the bridge guy is his dad and his son. What is up with it? Is there anything to that?
No.
He swears.
Sean Harmon is mentally ill, and he's had a hard life, and I'm sure that his dad has done horrible things in his personal life, but they gave the tips over to law enforcement, and there really hasn't been any movement on that guy. So even our insider has said specifically that the Harmons are not. They've been looked into and thoroughly vetted. So
because he kind of gets mad if I don't take him seriously, if I don't like.
Yeah.
He'll be like, "You're not listening. It's my dad. You're not listening." He'll get kind of mad. It's like, well, I mean, how do you know? Send me some proof, Well,
that's
he's got like pictures.
I got my evidence, and I'm showing you my evidence, but all he's doing is saying that his dad's the killer. So that's not really evidence.
Yeah, he sent me he sent a mod of mine a picture. I think it was his dad, and then I was like, "Can you get a recording of his voice? I mean, let's hear the voice." But
it does sound similar, but we've gone down so many rabbit holes at this point with voices and things like that we just believe that it's very hard to get a proper assessment of a moment in time.
My problem with the recording is, I mean, if you listen to Carrie Timmons talk about the first time they ever heard the recording, she said it sounded all garbled, like, so they couldn't even tell what he was saying. So, and I understand they've obviously cleaned up the voice, but the thing is, like, what's the fidelity of that to how he actually sounds? You know what I mean? That much. How much does this cleanup job actually sound like?
I'm sure it's the
How
best.
much does it change the actual? Yeah, because
without knowing who he is, it's not like they can fit the vocals to sound like someone. It's just, you know. And so
that's
I've
true.
always,
So it might not. So you're saying she got to hear like the raw audio, and she said it was just okay. I was wondering how much they did alter that and clean
It
it
was
up.
in
'cause
Libby's pocket at the time, and so we don't really know the condition that the phone was in when it was recording. Maybe she fell or something like that. It damaged something. Maybe it was sitting in the wrong area and it just didn't pick up too much. And they've had to. I'm pretty sure they've gone to Disney and they've gone to NASA to like try to fix the video even. So they're spending literally millions and millions and millions of dollars going after this guy. And
you just can't make up pixels that aren't there, though.
Right.
So, they've done the best job that they can do without actually altering the original image, because you can't do that. You can't make up things.
Why was the original one like kind of like more stocky and chubby? It was like almost like it was smushed down, and then he looked skinnier after. When they just released the screenshot, it was like he was like all chubbier, and then when they did the video, he looked skinnier. And it's like, wonder why they probably just altered the screenshot.
If you take a look at the frames, though, if you go through the video frame by frame, he changes so much. And we tried to do like a good height assessment as well. We went to the bridge, but there were so many factors at play that it's impossible. So even though law enforcement has also stated that he's 5'6" to 5'10", it's more probable that it's just impossible to get a very good assessment on how tall the guy is. He was 70 feet away from the girls when the video was captured, but with an old iPhone 6, and if it was in selfie mode, then that camera's already not as good as the front facing.
You also have to get the exact angle that Libby's holding the phone.
Yeah.
Exact height, everything. And that's the only way that it's going to look right. And so when we went there, we kind of came to the assumption that he was around 5'8" visually, which would explain why they're doing the 5'6" to 5'10". It's a rough estimate. But like we said, there's gravel at the end of the bridge as well. And so that creates its own problems. If the gravel's not sitting the way it was 5 years ago, if we're not standing in the exact spot where Libby was standing, if he's in mid-stride or if he's standing tall, we know that he's kind of walking forward. He's got his shoulders up.
Yeah. I know I saw that video you did with Anthony Greeno. That was pretty cool though, how you did that. I like that.
Yeah, that was a nightmare, but
we won't get into that. Oh, okay. How long did you stay in Indiana?
5 days, 4 days. No, 4 days.
Yeah, I think we went there.
The last time was 4 days.
Oh, you went there a few times, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I've been wanting to go out there because it's not really that far from where I am. It's only like, I think 3 hours or something, but I was planning a trip last year and then I just never made it.
You really should go. You'll get a better understanding of what happened. The bridge looks a lot bigger than it truly is. It's about as
scarier.
It's about as wide as a sidewalk. So
I know. I don't know. I think I'd be afraid to cross it. Did you guys walk all the way across?
Unfortunately,
it was awful. It was awful. It was terrifying.
If you look at pictures of the bridge and how people, it really doesn't matter what angle you photograph it. The ties look like they're closer together than they are. The only way to really get a true scope of what it looks like and how far apart they are is to stand on top of it and shoot down. There's no other. And I think even in the picture behind you that you have right there, there's some ties that are a good 3 feet, 4 feet apart.
That's a 3 foot gap right there at least. It might even be 4 feet. There was one part in the bridge that's missing 2 ties, and then you're literally having to stretch across like 5 feet. So we had to have Mr. Greeno stand in the middle and kind of usher us across, because he just stands on beams and walks across like it's nothing. But for us, it was horrifying.
I bet. Does it move at all? Is it pretty sturdy? Because I thought they spent like a lot of money making it a little bit more sturdy, didn't they?
No. It's every year. Even when we went there in May, it looks worse for wear now than it did even in May. So
they've done a really good job paving the trail. The 501, yeah, all the way going up to the bridge. They've done a really great job with that. But the bridge itself, they've done nothing to. I think there was at one point they like threw a board over.
Yeah, and they leave this beautiful trail all the way up to this rickety bridge,
and it's just
there's no barrier telling people not to go out there, and so people literally just walk out there like it's the yellow brick road. And I'm surprised that more people haven't been injured on this because it's very, very dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous.
So
wow, I wonder.
It's 75 feet in the air too. So
yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to do it. I probably would just make myself do it, but I would be afraid. But they're doing something with it, aren't they? I thought there was some kind of construction, because that was one reason I didn't go last year too, is because they said it's like closed and they're working on it, so that they're not really working on the bridge part. You're saying?
I think that the conflict is coming from the owners of the properties on the other side of the bridge. I think that they don't want people over there, and so it's kind of created a bit of a problem for them, because they want to build it out, but if it's going to cause people to be walking to the other side and trespassing, it creates an issue. And so I think some of the neighbors and stuff like that don't want people crossing the bridge, even though that's what's happening.
They also in a preventative effort to get people to not go into the down the hill area. Someone has put horse poop.
Yeah.
In that.
So that's nice. That's a nice addition
like
to the other side.
Horse cow pies.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Wow.
Just make you just want to go visit and see all these wonderful things.
Oh my gosh. So that Ron guy, he still has that property out there, right? Did you guys happen to talk to him or anything? Or?
No, we didn't. He doesn't really talk to anybody anymore. So
okay.
People
Katie Kitty, definitely. If you have any questions, I keep looking in chat and I'm trying to catch all the questions. I didn't see any questions by you. Let me see. Some people think video fake. Okay, see, I don't understand. Do you guys understand this right here? Yes, some people think video a fake. It's a small. No, I've never heard of that. There's some people that think that. I've never heard that, but I'm sure.
I haven't heard that either.
Yeah, I don't think that it was faked or anything. I don't think the family's involved in any cover up or anything like that. I think this was a horrible crime. The most I will say is, if the town is corrupt, and I have my views on all of that. The crime was more of an inconvenience to the things that were going on there that these people were getting away with, and so it's drawn more attention and more scrutiny from the public, and that might give reason to them not wanting to release information. But other than that, I don't think anyone's really involved in the cover up or that the girls died as a result of anything that's overly nefarious.
So you don't think Fouts has anything to do with anything anymore as far as this whole scenario?
Well, other than, that the community is housing pedophiles, we know that that's true. We know that they have a wide ring of people that they're involved in. It's all across the United States, all across the world. You have some people of power. Look at Prince Andrew. Look at all that other stuff. I'm not trying to throw out accusations about Clinton and stuff, but him flying around with on Buddy's plane there, going out to that island and stuff, it all does not look very good for some of these officials who have endless amounts of money and are able to kind of just do things like this and get away with it. So, without going down that sort of conspiracy.
My thing is that there are people that do that, definitely, and there's probably a lot more than we'd like to assume that there are. But and this is in no way saying that these people are doing anything good, but there is a line that exists somewhere where there's people that are capable of that, but not every one of those people is capable of murder. And also has homicidal ideation.
Yeah.
And a sexual attraction to homicide.
Yes.
So.
Yes, I agree with you on that one.
Our insider says that that's the MO of this individual. He's homicidal ideation and sexual gratification. So he's having fantasies.
hey, he's done this before? Is this his first and only time, or what do they think?
Law enforcement believes this is the first time that this individual killed.
But it's hard
don't
to
know how
believe
they
him,
know.
and he hasn't acted again. And how? What it's been?
Well, all the more reason to suspect that whatever ring was involved with this is being looked at and scrutinized by law enforcement at this point. Something's preventing him from acting again. You don't just one day wake up and have fantasies like this and go out and kill 2 kids in broad daylight. This is a hunter. This is a person who fantasized about this for a long time. And being part of the true crime community, we've seen this all too many times. Unfortunately, sometimes it crosses over into children, and it makes it that much worse because, murder in itself is awful, but to murder a child the way this guy did and humiliate them and leave them like that for their families to find, this individual needs to be stopped and captured. So hopefully they're doing the right thing and that this case is moving forward. But
I hope. So Kitty has another question. She said, why can't satellite get a picture from that day?
I'm sure they have.
I'm sure they probably have, because that would be even hard to pick up anything in that dense of a.
Gray Hughes actually paid to get satellite photos from around that day. And I believe he was only a few days past when the murders happened. So he actually got satellite photos of the area that he could zoom in and he could see the crime scene and the way it looked and everything. But it just happened to be 48 hours after the murders happened or something. So something ridiculous.
Okay. Wow.
So I'm sure law enforcement does the same sort of thing. They look into that. But
yeah, I'm sure. She has a lot of questions, Katie. Good question. So what about the Lafayette Boys Club? I'm not aware of that one.
That's the Fouts connection.
The Fouts guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, remind me what that is, the Lafayette Boys Club.
Well, Tiara, who is the woman that was giving all of the information about Fouts as an escort, she had said she was referring to a group of men that seemingly held esteemed positions within the city as the Lafayette Boys Club. That's what that is, not the Kokomo crew. That's a completely different thing.
It's more like a collection of guys, and supposedly they call it their church, and they're involved in abducting and assaulting women and things like that. Some of these people give their wives up to these group members, horrible things like that. But we don't know the validity of any of that. They're all accusations. I have spoken to the mistress of Fouts and her mother, and Curtis Fouts is definitely a sketch bag. He's followed her around and ended up in Chicago when she tried to get away from him, and he was wearing all black and sitting outside her house watching her, and used court computers to find out where her location was. And
he's a creep for sure.
He is, man. So I know I watched that video of him when she taped him when he came over. So he's still practicing. He's a lawyer, right? He still has a practice now, because I know he's not a judge anymore because he had.
I'm surprised that he hasn't been disbarred, because I know that
that's
one of the things that you get disbarred for is soliciting an escort.
I just think it's rigged. That place is so rigged. Robert Ives for years was sweeping things under the rug, and I'm not convinced that McClelland's involved in the same sort of stuff, but at the same time, it makes you wonder, why the property frauds and stuff that they were outright caught for, why the charges were just dropped, and why they're refusing to release the documents showing the course of the investigation when he found that they weren't going to press charges and stuff like that. Like, he refused to release all of that stuff, and that's freedom of information. That's the reason that those things are in place, is to stop the conflict of interest that they're doing there. But I don't know. Ives doesn't like us anymore. We interviewed him at the beginning of the year and stuff, but we kind of dealt with it in a neutral way, and I don't think he likes me. So.
So Mary says, can I ask you what made you change your mind with GE? Wait, who's GE from the
Gabe
beginning?
Ellis.
Oh, Gabe Ellis. Yes, Gabe Ellis. I remember that was pretty convincing, actually.
Nothing overtly changed me. It was more speaking to the families. and getting to know Becky, Becky kind of began to debunk certain things that were required in my theory. And so in the debunking of those things, it started to become clear that maybe I was heading in some wrong directions. I didn't come right out and say that he was not a suspect. There are a lot of interesting connections to him around the time of the crime, and some of the other things that are going on in that area at that time. But yeah, it's mostly to do with Derek German's involvement in meth dealing and all that other stuff back in the day. And once I started kind of going through the evidence and asking her questions, it became clear that there's a lot of hysteria and a lot of misinformation that's out there. And so I just tried my best to kind of look at it differently.
Alrighty. Thanks for joining, Joyce Brooks.
Hello.
Let's see. There was another question, but where did it go? Ted Bunt. Wait, what is this? Ted Bunt said the more he looked at Violet, the more he wanted to do it. And I don't even know what that means. Do you?
I should probably talk about Ted Bundy.
Oh, Ted. Okay. The more he looked at Violet, the more he wanted to do it, and it escalated. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the way serial killers and that type of ideation works. Typically, it's a psychiatric issue that's just out of control. They feel and know that it's unnatural, so they have a grasp of right and wrong. They try to fight those feelings, and then eventually they start kind of testing the waters with by kind of living those fantasies a little bit, but they don't go all the way. And eventually, it always goes to where they didn't want it. If you listen to the interviews with Ed Kemper, he talks about this a lot. The development of his criminal behavior and how it sort of became intoxicating for him to be in power and be in control. And just knowing that the gun was under his seat, that the victim didn't know the gun was there, would give him sexual gratification. It excited him, and that's the way these guys operate.
Brad Weber. So, Zav, do you think Brad Weber? I don't know who that is either. Do you guys?
His mother owns a piece of property that is on the private drive, on the south end of the bridge, and people have talked about him just because there was some interest in him not being at work that day and him watching over his mother's house, and people had sort of gone back and forth about that. But I don't consider him a POI necessarily. I think people around the bridge, they've pretty much spoken very closely to, and I think if it was going to be somebody that was living around the bridge, they would have probably caught that person by now. Just
like the family, the neighbors in the area would have been the heaviest scrutinized.
Yeah.
They would have been looked at by law enforcement in the immediate days after. And
their property, they haven't sold the property either. Their property is, I think it's the one with the shoe tree that's on it. So
it's pretty creepy. You go to the bottom of the hill and up about maybe 150 yards, you get this tree that has these shoes dangling from the branches. It's very creepy.
It's sort of Hills Have Eyes-y feeling.
But it's rural there, so
it's rural, but I think it's more about knowing what happened there and then seeing this tree with like 70 shoes hanging from it, where it's just sort of, and we were lost at that point the first time we were there, so that was terrifying.
Wait, the shoe tree that happened after Delphi? Is that?
I think it was there before.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it's just been there.
Yeah,
but it's a strange thing to walk up on when you're sort of in the middle of the woods.
It's a creepy area because you know the history. You know that the lives of two little girls were murdered out in those woods, and so there's already this feeling that the suspect walked where you are, and it kind of gives you this kind of otherworldly sense of just a scary place. It's kind of cursed with the ideas of everything that happened that day, and it will never live beyond that.
It's definitely a weird vibe on the bridge, and on the south end of the bridge, it's definitely super strange. They've even in recent days put a pin where they think, or somebody has, where they thought the suspect was standing and everything. So.
Oh, really? Yeah. Wow.
The
I
whole
wonder if
area
he's
is-
ever returned back there after this. I wonder if he goes back there.
I'm sure that he has.
I'm sure.
He either
on
has
some
or
level.
he's just stayed the hell away from it.
If he's a local, he's been there again. That's my
I feel
belief.
like, yeah, because they like
Might
to go
feel
back
different,
to.
but
I mean, I could honestly see it going either way.
she's the
Yeah.
more logical.
I don't think that's necessarily true.
So is Chadwell part of the Kokomo crew?
Chadwell's not part of the
Oh,
Kokomo crew,
okay.
but it's such a small area over there that I have no doubt that Chadwell knew Klein and Klein knew people involved in the Kokomo crew. Peru's only got 11,000 people. I think Delphi's got 2,900.
Kokomo crew is more Garrett Kirts,
Yeah.
Keegan Dunker,
And all of them know each other or know people that are related to the families. So it's just hard to find patterns, or it's easy to find patterns that don't lead anywhere. They're just there because there aren't a lot of people there.
Are they really friendly? Like if you go to Delphi and you start talking about this, is it kind of like a weird?
Yeah, they don't like you.
Well, if you go to Delphi and you start asking people that are in Delphi,
yeah.
We did talk to some people like the first night we were there, the very first time we went, that was relatively open about talking about it and was sort of emotional about it and wanting us to make sure that we knew that Delphi wasn't all just about the murders and there's so much more to it. But yeah, it's sort of weird to walk around downtown because there's not very much going on down there storefront wise, but there's just these sun washed images of him hanging in store windows.
They're kind of frozen in time. That's what it feels like. So just kind of in the immediate months after the murder, that's what it feels like everywhere. It's like many other rural areas that are going through hard times. A lot of storefronts don't have any businesses in them. But all around, it's a pretty place. And, it does feel a little bit intrusive to go into an area that small just because you're kind of perpetually in someone's backyard.
Yeah.
And then you're asking about murders and things like that. And they know you're from out of town. So they kind of look down on that a little bit. But we're just looking for answers, trying to help people to move forward. We want to get this killer. And that's really one of the most important parts of why we're doing what we do.
Yeah. Cool. So Hope Rain says, do you feel it was an initiation type killing or more opportunistic?
I don't think it was necessarily either. I think this guy wanted to do this, and I think he had a plan, and I think he brought things to do what he wanted to do. And I think I think Libby was at least targeted.
Yeah, we were told that he had binoculars with him. He had gags. He had handcuffs. He had a hunting knife.
There are things from the recording, apparently, that the person that we've been talking to who has heard or seen the transcripts of the video they've insinuated that there is some dialogue on there that would lead someone to believe that he had these things, seeing as binoculars, I was watching you from across the bridge and I saw you trespassing type thing. Not I have binoculars.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more like the events that are recorded capture the sound of cuffs and and that's how law enforcement has kind of determined that.
Do any of you guys have any questions? Any more questions in the chat? Anything more do you think you should add? I'm trying to think if I don't know if we should go much further into the Fouts, unless if you have anything else to say about. I would love to see you do a video on that, though, at least just the corruption, but I don't know if you how open you are to doing that, because you know a lot about that.
Yeah, I have kind of a sick sense of humor, I guess, and so some of the videos that I've chosen to put out in the past were a little bit harsh. That weren't involved with the murder, but more involved with the corruption and the way they're kind of covering each other's butts and stuff like that. But maybe we could do something like that and kind of just draw attention. I try to every 4 or 5 videos just kind of throw out there questions for Delphi locals to ask themselves, in the end, it's their money that these thieves are using for their little projects and stuff like that they're not giving any account to the citizens. And it's very unfortunate because people in the town don't seem to care or are unable to see it. But people who are external, once you start looking into the evidence, it becomes clear that there are deliberate actions by officials to cover stuff up. And unfortunately, a murder happened in the same community, and so it kind of creates its own set of hoops to have to jump through. And
do you think if you do a video on something like that, that it would bring like any troubles, like legal troubles or anything?
I don't think that we could necessarily get in any sort of legal trouble just because it's pure speculation that we're doing this on. We haven't really received any firsthand information from any of the sort of locals or insiders that we've talked to that is stuff that's unknown.
All you have to do is go by the news reports. If you go back to 2016 and you take a look at the year 2016 specifically, Carroll County was involved in basically some illegal property sales and stuff like that, where they were forging the signatures of council members and stuff, and got caught outright doing this. And because of the complaint, Robert Ives put the paper into the Indiana State Police to see if there was probable cause, but then decided he was not going to press charges. And so Debbie Lowe, who runs the paper there, has been very critical of the way the county has run things, has criticized the McCains for raising millions and millions of dollars and putting no money to anything. It's just been within the last year that they've renovated the trails after collecting millions.
They've done a good job on that. It is a very beautiful path that they have created, and they've put up some nice fences too. So I will give them credit where credit is due. But that's an awful lot of money to be like, all right, here you go. Like,
would I say that that's over $2 million? I would say no. So if you take a look at their organizations too, because a lot of them are public organizations, they have to release their tax records and stuff like that. And so we've started looking into some of the charitable organizations there and stuff, and the money just does not add up. They have enormous revenues and very, very low liabilities and upkeep, and claiming that they're getting $0 in revenues when we know that that's not true. And it's very suspicious.
I don't think we're going to get any sort of legal trouble. I just think that people don't necessarily want us poking around with that.
Yeah.
But again, we are speculating. So if people are getting upset about it, then that's a cause for concern, right?
Well, especially if you have documents that kind of show something that looks irregular. We've had some forensic accountant take a look at some of the reports too. And while there's nothing like overtly illegal, very suspicious numbers being reported on things. And, Indiana's very lax on their charitable organization laws. So basically anyone can start a charitable organization and collect money. And if your donations are under $5,000, you don't have to report them or be transparent about them. And so, you raise hundreds of thousands of dollars and you just put down that you've received a bunch of donations that are all under $500,000 or $5,000, and you don't really have to report who you're receiving the money from or where it's going. So, they kind of need to adjust their laws, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So your podcast, you haven't started a podcast, right? Because Katie was asking, what is your podcast name? Have you started it yet? Like
Not
you have
yet,
your channel, The Crime Dive Investigates. Hey, mods,
Mhm.
can you put their link up in the chat? But go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Yeah, no, we're gonna do a podcast eventually, sort of do a dual YouTube podcast type thing. But we're just trying to get sort of everything set first with what we want to do with YouTube and get our setup right for podcasts and stuff, so the sound quality is good, etc. But
yeah, talk about other cases and kind of dive deep into them. And we're kind of thinking of maybe doing some stuff with the podcast where, she's kind of like an encyclopedia of crazy cases that I've never heard of. And so that might be an interesting angle to kind of go through. I go into it kind of not knowing, and she brings up some stuff, and my first assessments on what I'm hearing might be interesting for listeners. So,
Yeah.
And we did
So-
just do Evansdale too.
I know that's what I was just gonna say. They just did a video on Evansdale. Go check it out. You interviewed
check it
one
out.
of the girls' fathers, right?
Yep,
I was
Drew
trying
Collins.
to
Drew
watch some-
Collins.
yeah.
He's a great guy. And their story needs to be heard just as much as the girls in Delphi. So we did about an hour and a half long interview that we have split up into 2 parts there. The first part is up on the channel now. So it's the most recent video.
Yeah, guys,
We're
go
very
check it
excited
out.
about
The
people.
links are in the chat now. So you don't think it's related to Delphi, right?
Well, law enforcement said early on that they're not related. And, there's nothing other than maybe circumstantial evidence that points to them being connected. I think they're just similar because they involve children, they involve trails, and they involve a homicide that occurred during the day. But other than that, I think Evansdale's about 8 hours away from Delphi. So, it's
8
not
hours. Okay.
not beyond the realm of possibility, I suppose, but
It is. I mean, A, it's rare to have a homicide. B, it's rare to have a homicide of a person that you don't know. C, it's rare to have a double homicide in the middle of the day. So it's
Yeah.
like
I mean-
lightning in a bottle rare.
on paper, it looks like they are related, but I think that we're probably, in my opinion, it's 2 different types of offenders. But
Okay. Isn't there a third one too that's kind of similar? What was the other one?
they said Zion is the other one.
I haven't heard that.
People have been throwing that out a little bit recently, I think.
forget
We're not
what the
as
name-
familiar with that one.
I forget which one, if it is Zion. I know somebody had done a video a while back. I forget what the third one. Maybe it is Zion.
Yeah, there were 2 girls.
Yeah, it was 2 girls. It was in the day. It was kind
me
of
see.
similar to these.
I think the guy's been caught though, Jorge Avila Torres.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay. Okay. But isn't there like some doubt that it was really him though? I think that's why they're
Yeah.
doubting that maybe it really wasn't him, but
I think in order for law enforcement to press charges and have probable cause, that there has to be overwhelming amount of evidence that points to them being in the right direction when they press charges like that. So it's highly, highly rare for them to incarcerate someone wrongfully like that. But it is possible.
I'm just seeing if there's any more questions, guys. Yeah, go check their channel out. You guys do such good videos, and
Thanks.
Thank you. You too.
I gotta
Yeah,
catch up.
I've always been a fan of yours. I've
Aw.
always,
Yeah, you're
I think
great.
since the very, very beginning, you might have only had about 15,000 people when I first noticed you, and you've grown so much, and
Yeah, people love you.
we're starting to grow too, and it's feeling
Thanks, and
it's
yeah,
feeling really good to be able to finally say things that can affect lives and actually change things.
Yes, you guys are doing great. I don't know. I guess I'll wait like a couple more minutes to see if anybody has
Sure.
any questions here, because I usually end too soon and people are like, I had questions. Let's see. Some people say he copped for a better prison. Wait, Katie, who are you talking about? Some people said he copped for a better prison placement. Oh, are you? Wait. No, I don't know who you're talking about. Can you elaborate on that, Katie? They might be related through the person on the profile. Okay, I'm not sure what that means either.
Through Anthony Schatz, then?
Oh, maybe I see what you're saying. That those other cases might be
Well,
related.
if that is the case, then that all the more kind of proves that this Anthony Schatz name is being used by.
Pedophiles in general. I don't think that it would necessarily have any relation to do with Evansdale, mainly just because the girls didn't have social media. As far as the parents know, they just had cell phones with games on it and stuff, and they were younger too.
It was a decade ago.
And it was a decade ago, so there was no Instagram kick, or maybe there was Instagram, but it wasn't what it is now.
Right.
So if other people are using that profile, do you think Keegan is like selling like them to use it, or how does that work? He's selling.
That's
the
a theory
past?
that we had pretty much, that one of the things that I had mentioned was that I thought it was a possibility that he was, for money, for income, he was setting up appointments, quote unquote, like meeting the girls online with the profile via Instagram and then handing it over to somebody else to talk to them.
Getting images, convincing them to send images, and there were some meetups that were scheduled, whatever that means.
That's what I want to know. Was there any other meetups, or was it all just? Did anybody ever
what law
show?
enforcement's asking? You know, when they ask about the profile, they're asking the public for.
Did you meet up with him? Who showed up? If you
who
did,
showed up. So all of that stuff kind of indicates that there is something to the profile, that we know Keegan Klein created the profile, because they say it in the affidavit. We just don't know what the profile was being used for exactly when it comes to speaking with other individuals.
But see, that's why I feel like if they would have said something sooner about that profile, because think about 5 years passed. So now these people that use that met up with somebody, now their memories might be a little bit more foggy, or they're not going to
I agree.
think about it, you know.
I think a lot of this has to do with interagency difficulties. So you might have the same police force, but the different task force might not communicate properly. And so then you end up with red flags not being caught. You have people investigating for other crimes, but not giving the information to other pertinent areas. I know for a fact that law enforcement refuses to use I believe it's called ViaCap. It's a program created by the FBI for serial homicides, things like that. You put the information into this database, and all law enforcement agencies could use that. But I think out of something like 80,000 agencies, only 1,400 are using them or something.
Yeah, it's like a violent offender.
It's like a violent offender database.
That could be very usely. Why wouldn't everybody be using that? What?
I just think law enforcement kind of have, you know, there's some not getting along between the different agencies, and
chips on shoulders in some
egos.
places.
So it's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Yeah, unfortunately, but hopefully we're getting close now, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
thanks for having
us. Awesome. Maybe come back another time soon, and I'll be watching. I'm gonna go watch some of your videos this weekend. So yeah, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. Go subscribe to them. Crime Dive Investigates. Mods, can you put their link in the chat one more time? And I'll put it in the description right now. I'm going to go over and put it in the description. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.